High Performance Vet Pro Radio.
Welcome to High Performance Vet Pro Radio. Here, you will learn everything you need to know to become a high-performance veterinary professional. We will focus on optimizing your sleep, fitness, nutrition, mental performance, stress response, and work-life balance. Please enjoy these professional interviews with cutting-edge content from Dr. Jennifer Quammen and human performance coach Ryan Smith from HighPerfLiving.com.
Welcome back, high performers, to another High Performance Vet Pro special interview. Each month we try to bring you at least one, usually two interviews with either a high-performing veterinarian or a professional from outside the veterinary world to broaden your knowledge base in information or technology so that you can improve your life. Today we bring you an interview with a veterinarian that has taken his life to the next level. Today's guest is someone who's taken his experience all the way up to the top level in the equine veterinary industry. He's developed a successful practice and executive consulting business. He's become a sought-after keynote speaker, board member of many industry organizations, a competitive equestrian, and someone who's overcome many major personal challenges in life. And you'll talk a little bit about some of that today. So when Dr. Jen and I first came up with the idea of high-performance living, one of the first people we consulted with is Dr. Andrew Clark. Dr. Jen considers him not just a mentor and an advisor, but most importantly, a friend. Dr. Clark is very well respected in the veterinary industry, and we'll talk about some of that as we go along, but it's not just the fact that he's successful. We all have different desires, so veterinary within the equine veterinary industry may not be yours, but it's the story that helps to inspire us. So that what we call a hero's journey within movies or books. And that's what we want to know about Dr. Clark. So I'm going to introduce Dr. Clark here in just a moment. This is actually kind of a second shot at doing this, so we may kind of go over a little bit about this because we had some technical issues on the first time. But so let's go back to kind of your entry and calling into the veterinary world. So let's talk about kind of that beginning stages. So kind of where did it all start for you?
Thanks, Ryan. I was raised in a cattle ranching family in a very remote part of California. My first class in college had more people than my town did, so that's my measure of remote. And I remember the exact day that I was sort of validated for my idea of wanting to be a veterinarian. And in a little town like that, Bishop, California is the town. We had one veterinarian, and he, of course, did everything that needed to be done to any kind of an animal. So he was a kind of a James Herriot guy. But I was really fascinated by him working on horses. And I thought there was something really at least cool about that and maybe almost magic. And I had no earthly idea, how could I know, as a little kid, that there was such a thing as an equine practitioner. But so I was about 8 years old, and I decided I wanted to be like Dr. Hurd, only I just wanted to be a horse doctor. So now imagine this scene where you have the day that the veterinarian comes out and preg checks all the cows. Okay, so we've got cows, and we've got calves, and we've got cowboys, and we've got horses, and it's pandemonium in all directions. And here's Dr. Hurd's truck parked next to the chute where he's preg checking cows. And I walk up in the middle of all this, and I just sort of tug on his overalls, his coveralls leg, and I said, "Dr. Hurd, I have a question for you." And it was amazing to me because in all this pandemonium, he was the key of the whole thing. If he stops, everything stops. He turned around and he sat down and he said, "What's your question?" And I said, I want to be an equine veterinarian when I grow up. I didn't say that. I said, I want to be a horse doctor when I grow up. And what do I need to do? And I remember him saying, well, it's pretty early in your life to start planning, but that's good. And he says, but what you have to learn to do is to be a really good student, because you'll get into college based on being a good student. You'll get out of college based on being a good student. You'll get into veterinary school based on being a good student. And you'll get out of veterinary school being based on being a good student. So I had now my little plan because I knew what I wanted to be, and so it was easy enough to. And I had been a little slacker, sort of a kid that just paid enough attention to not get sent home, and I became the student of all time, okay, because I was pursuing my dream. And so that's the person I had. There are several experiences in my life with very specific people on very specific days that were turning points for me. And that was one of them, and it gave me my objective, and it gave me my first steps to meet my objective.
Wow, that's something that I wish we all would have had. I know my parents were teachers, but I never quite got that kind of experience. So that's quite the experience.
It was cool, and it lasts, to this day. I remember him sitting down and acting like that was a reasonable question and a perfect time to ask it,
right.
and it was probably neither.
Yeah, and that's cool. Those are those key people that just always kind of lead you on in life and kind of give you that direction that most of us need. Hopefully, we all can find somebody like that, but not all the time do we do that. So you get this experience of meeting with the horse doctor there on the ranch. So that kind of leads you then all the way up into getting into vet school. So kind of that gave you the focus, I guess, to get into vet school.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
All right. So kind of talk about then the process of going through vet school. Kind of what kind of experience did you have with that? I mean, so obviously your goal is as an equine practitioner and going through vet school, but that's not just what you learn in vet school. So you have to learn all the animals. So
right. I went to veterinary school. I graduated in 1977. So that gives you some perspective on time. And for a short period of time, then UC Davis had a tracking program. So I was able to track equine. Okay. And I also had that 20-year-old confidence that I knew exactly what was best for me. And so I would cut out on some stuff that I should have been going to, and I would sneak down and go down to the horse barns, and volunteer to help with treatments or do something. So I just spent a lot of time down there. And I knew I had to pass the national boards and pass the state boards, but somehow I was super confident in my own mind that I knew just how much of this stuff I could cut and still pass the boards, which did work. Okay, the strategy worked, but it was a flawed strategy. Okay, I wouldn't recommend it for anybody. So I came out very fortunate, and I had volunteered. I had done some research projects with Dr. Hughes, and I had palpated a lot of mares, and so I got out of school, and I was really ready to go into the broodmare market, and that's where I was headed at that point in my career. So my strategy worked, and when I got out, the strategy became apparent that if it hadn't worked, it would have been a catastrophe, because there were 13 of us in the equine track, and that year in California there was one job, in an equine practice, and I was fortunate enough to get that job. But I'm thinking about, my God, the poor small animals. If I hadn't gotten that job, So to this day, I pay somebody to vaccinate Jake the cat. I pay somebody to vaccinate Daphne the dog, because I don't want to experiment on them.
Right.
I'm an equine guy.
Right. You're the veterinarian, but at the same time as you're more of that, obviously, expert within the equine industry. So you're not going to work on turtles either.
No, and the poor turtles they deserve better,
Right. All right. So you get out and you get the one job that's in California then. Mm-hmm. So what does that kind of go through, and how does that lead you to, I guess, we're going to take a broad picture at this. So ultimately, along with your consulting business, you end up as CEO of Haggard Equine Medical Hospitals, right? So how do you go from the one person that gets a job in California to there? So let's kind of dig into that. I guess that points of where's the struggle? So if we're going to go this movie analogy so the hero, so if we have Braveheart, he goes through the struggle, right? So let's talk about some of the struggles that people also may relate to, that they have to go through.
Struggles in life are usually related to change. Mm-hmm. And not many of us are truly embrace change every opportunity. And I graduated from veterinary school, and I was super prepared for the job that I took, because I went into essentially, I was probably 98% thoroughbred broodmare work. And at that point, that industry was really strong in California. I was super fortunate. I got some nice big farms, which there weren't very many in Northern California, and I had the lion's share of them. And so, and I had this great background because I had palpated thousands of mares with Dr. Hughes in these research projects. So I was super skilled at broodmare work. And so I knew the language, and I just went to work, and I was a brand new graduate. So I'm 23 years old, and I step in, and I'm managing my primary farm had 500 resident horses, and we had 13 stallions, and that's a big place for California.
Sure.
And so I just did stupendously. It was just awesome. And so I was there for about 9 years, let's say. So in 1986, there was a Tax Reform Act, okay, which changed the structure of taxation, so you couldn't write off losses in one industry against your other industry. So basically, it wiped out the thoroughbred market in Northern California because people were, doctors and lawyers, Indian chiefs, and diamond merchants, okay, and they were having their profit they were making on their real business, and then they were writing off their racing losses against it.
Right.
So it was a government subsidized racing staple. Okay, I understand that was not logical. So it went away, but there are always unintended casualties, and I'm one of the unintended casualties of that. So I went in about a 60-day period, maybe 90 days, from 98% thoroughbred broodmare guy to about 5% thoroughbred broodmare guy. The horses just vanished from Northern California.
Wow. It
was amazing. And so I'm looking around, and I've got all these skills that no one is in search of.
Right.
So I realized that, that was demoralizing to have your profession just went away.
Right.
Your piece of the profession. So I realized that I needed to do something else. I love equine veterinary medicine. So I decided I was going to pick out another place. And I was a cowboy. Okay, I grew up on a cattle ranch. I had my PRCA card for a while, and I knew all about cowboys. Well, there's no way to make a living on cowboys in California. Okay, that's not a market segment that's going to be profitable.
Yeah, not really anywhere.
So I decided that there were a lot of hunter-jumper barns in that area, and nobody was going to the Olympics, but it looked to me like a lot of people were really engaged. There were barns with 40 horses, another barn with 40 horses, a barn with 35 horses, a barn with 20 horses. So there were plenty of horses in training, and it looked to me like those horses, the decision maker was the trainer, okay? And so what I realized is that the trainers are going to know whether I really know the language or not, okay? Mm-hmm. And right now, I do not know the language of the hunter-jumper world. So I decided that because I wanted to make this change, and not only did I want to, I had to.
Right.
I needed to find a way to go to hunter-jumper school to learn about the language, okay? So there is no hunter-jumper school. So the second best thing would be find somebody to teach me. So I knew a hunter trainer, and she had a few jumpers in her barn, and I went to her and I said, look, I got an idea. I want to take lessons from you. And she looked at me like I might possibly be the stupidest man on earth. And she said, what are you talking about? And I said that I know you know me as a cowboy, but I really want to learn more about these horses and how they work and what their jobs are and what the language is that you communicate about them. And so she looked skeptical, and then I said, look, when you teach these lessons, you've got 4 to 6 kids going around in a circle around you, they're paying you something. So here's my plan. I want to stand behind you, and I will pay you whatever they pay you for the lesson, okay? Mm-hmm. And I just want to listen. And my commitment to you is I won't interrupt, I won't ask questions in front of me, and I won't be a nuisance, okay? So that's the deal. That's what I want. So whatever, I don't know what they pay, but I'll pay that amount. So she's sort of humoring the fool. She's okay, fine. So I have lessons, like 3 lessons a week for about 6 weeks. So at that point, I'm beginning to understand about what these horses do, when it's right, when it's wrong, what the fundamentals are, and what, most importantly, the language is. Because I think to be successful in anything, you have to know the language.
Right.
So, okay, I complete my 6-week course, and I'm pretty confident. I said, okay, here's my next step of my plan. You go to horse shows every weekend. I want to go to the horse shows with you. And again, I get the look. And it was worse than curious dog look. It was, oh, you poor soul. But at any rate, I said, so whatever they pay you for the day fee, I'm just going to follow you around. Everywhere you go, I'm just going to follow you around and listen. And I'll give you the same commitment. I won't ask questions in front of anybody. I won't interrupt you, and I won't embarrass you. So then I said, just tell me what they pay per day. So she told me, and so I said, okay, it's on. So I started going to the horse shows. Mm-hmm. So when I was at the horse shows, now I had watched them prepare, and I had learned the language of preparation. Right. Now I was able to learn the language of competition and what what the pieces were that led to, in the hunter world, a good score, in the jumper world, a clean round. Okay, so, and at that point, I really knew with absolute certainty, I knew more about the hunter jumper world than any of the veterinarians in my area. Okay, and they had seen me at their events, they had seen me following a trainer around, and so I was sort of accepted as knowledgeable.
Right.
Okay, so I was able to launch my career in my second career as a hunter jumper guy. I just drove my little flag in the ground as the hunter jumper guy, and I had all the business I needed. Wow. So I had awesome customers. We had great success, and I learned to develop teams because you have the trainer, you have the farrier, you have the veterinarian, you have the feed company, you've got some other people, and I had seen a lot of instances in the racing world where those were antagonistic towards each other. On the same team, working on the same horse for the same owner, they're antagonistic toward each other.
Right.
So what we did was we developed teams of the farrier, the trainer, and me, the veterinarian, and then anybody else that was, involved with the horses. And we all worked together, and we thought they were our horses. And every Tuesday morning when we would get together, we would say, how did we do? Okay, and that's how everybody looked at it. So I had great success because I was fortunate enough to be working for trainers who believed in a team, working with farriers who believed in a team, and we said, these are our horses. How did we do? And I would go to my second client and my third client, and in every barn, the conversation was, how did we do? Right. And I had learned about teamwork in there, and then taken the teamwork concept from playing basketball in high school and a brief little stint in college, and applied teamwork to veterinary medicine. And it was awesome. It was really, and it was a very pleasant working environment. So, okay, I had my change, the regulatory change,
right,
pushed me out of a job, got a new job, learned the language, going great. So one day I'm injecting a sacroiliac joint on a little horse named Joey, and Joey kicked me. And it was a literally near-death experience. I nearly died. I had the light come down to the little pinpoint, the whole thing. And my life was saved because I was near a trauma center rather than just an emergency room. So I was in the hospital for in and out of the hospital and therapy for almost 9 months. And at the end, I have no proprioception. I don't have much proprioception in my left leg. It's just too dangerous to work on horses. So
sure.
Well, damn it, right. I'm pushed out of my job again.
Right.
So at that point, my father had been an accountant, and so whatever your father does, that's what you hear about at the kitchen table.
Sure.
So I wasn't intimidated by business like most veterinarians are, okay? Because the veterinary admissions committees, just one thing they've done successfully for probably a century, uniformly they have selected for people that are uncomfortable talking about money.
Right.
Okay? And that's just the nature of veterinary medicine.
Sure.
We're just uncomfortable with money. So, but because my dad had been an accountant, I wasn't intimidated by it. I didn't know much about it, but I wasn't afraid of it.
Right.
So I decide that what I need to do is to get an MBA, okay? And then I can use my MBA and I can work sort of tangentially in the industry that I love, but I could just work from a new perspective. So again, really all that was going and learning a new language.
Right.
Okay. And then I'm going to tell you a story that is a fun story to tell.
Sure.
Okay. I was probably 45 years old when I went back to get my MBA.
Okay.
And the last time I had been in a class was when I was 23.
Okay.
Okay. So it was a while.
Right.
A lot of technology changed between there and there, and I was behind the curve. And so I go to the first day of class, and my wife, Kathleen, was long-listed for the Canadian 3-day event team. And one of the things, this is a long time ago, one of the things that Canadians do very well is they train their athletes to be coaches so that they'll be coachable.
Right.
Okay? So Kathleen gets it on all kinds of sports psychology. She gets it. She is very thoughtful, and she's a competitor, and she's a winner. So I come home the first day from class, and I said, man, I am really old, because I mean, I could be like almost 20 years older than some of the people in there. And she does, she had asked how my day was, and then, but not very far into this, she's back to reading. I don't remember what she was doing. She started doing it again.
Right.
That wasn't exactly the what I was looking for. So Okay, fine. So I went to school the next day, and I came home and with the same story, and I got even less attention. And so I go to school the third day, and I come home and say, holy crap, I am older than the professor. And so she sets down whatever she's doing, and she says, I think you ought to quit. And really, I mean, I'm looking for support here,
Right.
and that's just, so I should have realized that this is sports psychology getting ready to happen here. Okay. And there's a trap being set, but I don't know it. Okay.
Right.
So she says, you don't have a goal. And this is a woman that has a little binder of 35, probably maybe now approaching 40 years of goals. And there's a little check mark by almost everyone. And they're ambitious goals.
Right.
Okay. And again, in that Canadian program, they taught them about goal setting. So she says, so if you had a goal, what would it be? And so I am guilty of being a smart aleck from time to time, and I was at this time, and I don't realize it, but the jaws of the trap have gone click. Okay,
Right.
The trap is set. Okay, so what do? I say, well, I suppose I just go ahead and graduate with honors. Clang, the trap's shut, and my neck is in it. Okay, because I've said it out loud.
Right.
Okay, and that's another thing that she taught me about goal setting. If you say your goal out loud to somebody else, you're a lot more likely to achieve the goal.
Yes.
So, dang, now I'm committed. So I go in the next day and I talk to the dean. Okay, and this is one of those conversations that, again, a pivotal conversation. And so I come in and I've got the body language of a partially melted candy bar. Okay, I'm slump-shouldered and I'm looking at my shoes as much as I can. And I'd say, well, I've got this goal, and I think I'd sort of kind of like to. I want to try to graduate with honors, and this is my goal, and I'm not sure what to do with it, And the guy, just like Dr. Hurd, decades before, he treated it like it was a perfectly reasonable question and the perfect time to ask it. Okay, and so he said, well, I think that's great. Okay, so he validated that my idea was a good one. Okay. And he like, I'm not crazy. Okay,
Right.
He didn't say, geez, you're too old, you can't do that.
Right.
So he says, well, this is what I would do. It's important for everyone on the St. Mary's staff that you're involved with to understand what your objectives are. Okay, and I think it's perfectly reasonable for you to go in the first day of class and talk to your professors and say, I really want to graduate with honors. And what is special to you? Why do you give an honors in a class? And he said, you're not asking for special treatment. You're just asking them what's important and telling them what your goal is. Mm-hmm. And so he treated my question like it was perfectly reasonable. And he gave me this great response. So at the end of the story, I did graduate with honors, which is of no value to anybody but me because I said it out loud when
Right.
Kathleen tricked me. Okay, so I didn't have to eat any crow.
Right.
So when I graduated, I had done some work in Silicon Valley. St. Mary's is very close to Silicon Valley, and I had just done some sort of day work facilitating meetings and doing some things. But Silicon Valley is an awesome place to learn, and it has its own language. And I learned there about the concept of a virtual CEO, which later in the story that becomes important.
Right.
And then I started up my consulting business, just in practice management consulting in the equine world completely. And I was very fortunate because I had the credentials as an equine veterinarian that I was trusted to come into some pretty significant clients as a consultant. And so I started my pyramid upside down. I started with about 5 of the 10 biggest practices in America were my first customers.
Wow.
And then, so gradually my pyramid then turned right side up and I filled in with all different kinds. But I was fortunate, again, that I was able to start at the pinnacle and work to fill the palette. So a few years into this, a practice in Lexington, Kentucky, Haggard Equine Medical Institute, called up and they were doing a search for a CEO. So they asked if I would help them with that job search and help develop the plan. Mm-hmm. Sure. So I flew to Lexington and it was really cool. And I thought it was just great because Lexington's mecca for horse guys. And I had been in the thoroughbred industry a lot, so I was still kind of tainted with that,
Sure.
So I helped them do that and talked about the strategy and what the objectives should be for their new CEO. And they hired the person, and that was fine. And so then I kept on with my consulting work, and a few years later, that person left, and then they called and asked if I would like that position. And it was pretty cool because I had helped recruit for the position in the first place.
Right.
So, and Haggard at that time and remains the largest equine practice on the planet. Okay, and we were, I think we were 265 veterinarians. No. 65 veterinarians and about 250 non-doctor staff. Okay. So that's big.
That's big.
And the horse world is full of rugged individualists. So, there's a lot of herding cats to manage a practice like that. But it was really fun because the owners were really supportive, and we made the changes. It was a 120-year-old company at that time. And the challenge was to rebuild the company into a 2005 company.
Right.
So we put in new software. We changed, a whole bunch of things and made a great impact and modernized the company. They continued to provide great veterinary care. So that was that step of my life. I stayed there about 6 years, and I then left there and regained my consulting company. Not regained it. I just reopened it and started working. And I took that bit of knowledge that years before I had learned in Silicon Valley about virtual CEOs. And the virtual CEO is essentially in the early 90s, before the bubble burst in Silicon Valley, there were so many startups that there were not enough C-level executives, chief executive officer, chief financial officer, chief operating officer.
Right.
And the chief executive officer and chief financial officer, CEOs and CFOs, those lend themselves to, you don't need to be there full time. So you could basically, they started off calling them timeshares. Okay, so I might be the CEO of 4 or 5 different companies, and each one of them paid me 1/4 or 1/5 of a salary. Okay, then there were a lot of other people doing that. I was not doing it in Silicon Valley, but and then there was a kind of a rebellion because they kept calling them timeshares, and the people didn't like to be called timeshares. So then they invented the virtual CEO.
Okay.
So, a decade later, I think that's a cool idea. And there are so many practices that are never going to be able to afford or have access to that C-level advice. Okay. So why wouldn't I sell it a piece at a time? Okay. So I developed a virtual CEO program, and that's most of what I do right now. Okay. I have my virtual CEO work.
Right.
I facilitate 3 veterinary management groups, and then I just do kind of random consulting in and around those. I do a lot of speaking. Right. So that's my life right now, and that's sort of the steps. I got there, some kind of a setback, learn a new language, go along, everything is great. Some kind of a setback, learn a new language, go again. Right. So my life has been one of, I like looking through the windshield instead of the rearview mirror.
Awesome.
And I'm a forward-thinking person, and I'm kind of a plodder. I don't do anything extra fast, but I keep plodding toward my objectives.
Right. It's consistency.
And I have super strong goals, and I've been fortunate in my life that I've achieved my goals.
Right.
And I think it's from that, just learning the language and moving forward.
Yeah. And I think it's a great way, for most people, like especially with veterinarians. So whether it be small animal or equine or whatever type of practice, they've never learned business. So, but they're of the mindset that if I own a practice, then I'm just going to learn the business. So they actually never truly learn the business, right? So they're not good at managing money. They're not good at the management of people. They're not good about really anything. They're an animal person that is now thrust in the realm of being a people person as well. So they just never really have that mindset, and they never learn the language of it, as you said, right? So you kind of have stepped in and taken that role of, okay, you own the practice, but yet I can help you from a business standpoint, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think it's a great way, again, from most of them, they never really have that thought process to try to learn it. And, there's thousands and thousands of practices that are struggling with this, and it's well, one of the other things I know that you're passionate about is other organizations and helping from a leadership perspective and develop new people as well, and new people within the industry. So you help a lot of students, and you help a lot of people that are obviously in business, and one of the other things that you deal with is the Veterinary Leadership Institute and Veterinary Leadership Experience that you've been involved with. It's kind of, I guess, for several years now. So what kind of talk about that whole leadership development portion of it as well, and kind of going through that process.
I had my first experience with the Veterinary Leadership Experience, which is an event in Post Falls, Idaho, held each June. And I went there as a representative of the AVMA PLIT. I was chairman of the board of trustees at the time. And I went, and it was an amazing experience. It's a 5-day long event. And often people say it was a life-changing event. I disagree with that because the only person that can change your life is you.
Right.
But what VLE does is it gives you the tools to change your life.
Right.
So I'm splitting hairs here, but at any rate, I think it gives you the tools, and it was an amazing experience to come in as a participant and come out the end of the pipeline with an entirely different view on leadership and how critical it is. And then by that time, I was certainly far enough along in my career, this is 6 years ago, that I had seen the effects of lack of leadership in industries, in professions, in various businesses. And so I thought it was really a hugely valuable entity. So I became a volunteer for them. I now sit on their board of directors, and we have developed what's called the Veterinary Leadership Institute, which is trying to take to a broader audience the same sort of leadership that the Veterinary Leadership Experience, that 5-day event, has. And so now we're doing leadership events for private practices, for companies in the veterinary space, for schools, and that's probably about the end of it right now. But our goal is to have it grow and provide leadership training to a broader and broader and broader section of the profession at all times. And now it's really fun to see that if you look at the leadership in a lot of emerging professionals groups, students and young professionals, almost everybody in those positions came through VLE. And only, a few people per school. So it's not like everybody had this experience. So somehow we've centrifuged leadership.
Right.
And the pellet is the people that go to VLE. Right. And that's a kind of a wonky way to look at it. But and so what that tells me is it's working. Right. Okay. So that's the impetus to remain involved and to try and make this a bigger and better organization. And it's really fun. What my personal mission statement is to make a difference. And I think that is. That's what drives me, the opportunity to make a difference to people. Okay. And VLI certainly does that, and VLE, the individual experience week. Right,
and that's how you and Jen actually originally became friends.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, that was because I guess it was 5 years now that she's been doing this. So the first year as a participant, and I think now 4 years as a facilitator. And, that's just been, I guess, one of those things that has bound you all together as friends, because that, even though we were all in Kentucky, you all didn't know each other. Right. And it's become quite the friendship and the mentorship there, too.
And we would have never known each other. Our worlds were never going to collide. Right. And we learn about personality profiles and personality preferences, and I am a super introvert, like big font, capital letters, introvert. Okay. And Jen is a super extrovert, big font, capital letters, extrovert. So again, how in the world did we ever meet? Right. Okay. Well, I'm sitting over here in a corner trying to be isolated, and here comes this woman and sits down and parks right next to me and just chirps up her name and starts telling me her story. And it was Jen, and that's how we met. And it was great because I remain an introvert. I didn't really have much to say, but that wasn't important because she had plenty to say. So and then I think it was opposites attract, right. And we've just become really good friends. And periodically, like when I'm going to the Cincinnati airport, we'll meet for coffee or something on the way. And so we've remained friends and become stronger friends. Right. So, but it all started as an extrovert seeking out an introvert.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's really funny how those friendships develop. So we've talked about the business part, and I want to kind of finish up on kind of a personal note. So I want people to get to know, because then now they know you as the business person, right? Mm-hmm. So you are the DVM MBA, and that's who you are from that. So let's talk about a little bit about what you do for fun and your enjoyment. So you had a PRC card. Mm-hmm. So you were a cowboy in those days, and team roper, and did a lot of other events as well. But now you kind of went the other way within the equine show world, right?
Yes, I've had robust hobbies, and one thing I've been very, very, very adamant about of my whole career is work-life balance, and I have designed my life so that there was time for me to do what I like to do, mm-hmm. and that's changed over time. I grew up on a cattle ranch, like I said, and I was a cowboy in the next logical place for an overachiever, which I am. I'm pathologically competitive, so then of course you would have to become a professional. Okay, right. So against relatively severe odds, I became a PRCA member and competed professionally in team roping, and then I changed from team roping. I decided I was done with all that, and so I bought a BMW and a racquetball racket and sold all the horses in the truck and the trailer and the saddles, and so I was a racquetball player for a while. And I moved into an apartment that had racquetball courts because I wanted to be close to home. And then racquetball phased out and sailing came in. And I learned to sail, and that was probably one of the biggest passions of my life, was sailing. I had a nice boat on San Francisco Bay. And if you ever watch baseball on TV, when the Giants, you hit a home run into the bay, that marina out there, that's where I kept my boat. So it was right in San Francisco. And so I loved sailing, and then when Joey kicked me, that no proprioception is a bad thing to have on a sailboat. So right. I sold the sailboat, and then ultimately when I moved to Kentucky, sailing's out of the question anyway. So I at an advanced age, I've taken up riding in an English saddle and jumping, and Ollie's the horse. And Ollie and I went 2 weeks ago to a jumper show, and we actually made the jump off. That was a first for us.
Wow!
So, and I made around the jump off clean. So we didn't win, but we made it around. So that was a huge accomplishment. So that's my current hobby and passion is Ollie the horse.
Okay.
And I'm just having a great time.
So tell us about Ollie and some of your favorite animals, and so because that's, as a veterinarian, everybody has their favorite animals, right?
Yeah. So we right now have Jake the cat, who is now 15, bearing down on 16 years old. He's a Berman, and he's been with us his whole life. And he's now a doddering little old guy that we give medicine to and we take good care of, and he sleeps between us every night. So you've got this little furry cat sleeping in the pillow between the two heads, and that's Jake's spot. And Daphne the dog is our German Shepherd. Kathleen has always had German Shepherds, and so we now always have German Shepherds. And Daphne is a great dog, and she's got one little quirk. Is she's like a little kid that doesn't want to come in at night, and she likes to stay out in the farm and play and run around and chase stuff. And so she apparently thinks she's invisible because she stops and she lays really quietly and puts her chin down on the ground like this and is motionless. And then when you call her, she doesn't move. Her ears don't move because I think she thinks she's invisible. Okay,
it's too funny.
So that's her quirk. So then you have to really say her name sternly. Oh, dang it, he saw me. So then she'll come in the house, and then we've got Kathleen is a 3-day event rider, and so we've got we've got Coco the horse, and we've got Blue the horse, and we've got Eli the horse, and those are her 3-day eventing horses. And then I've got Buddy the Pinto, and he's a retired team roping horse. So those are and Ollie, of course. Right. And Ollie is the only one with an exclamation point after his name on the stall card. So that's mine.
Awesome. That's great. And that's, those are those fun things that, you talk about in your daily life, because that's the personal stuff, but you typically don't get to talk about them in the business standpoint. And I guess kind of as I'm listening to your story, you're kind of this study in contrast, so to speak. So here you are as a veterinarian that is learning things from Silicon Valley. You go from the PRCA team roper to racquetball to sailing, and then to obviously the whole opposite thing within the equine world to as a jumper, right? So there's a whole lot of contrast that goes on there, but that's where you learn about life. That's those having that ability to change, I would guess, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Most of us push back on change, fear of the unknown or fear of change. But I don't know that I'm any less adverse to change or less fearful of change than anybody else, but I just press on with it anyway.
Right.
And I've been very fortunate that I've found the right people, and it's sort of that Confucian saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Right.
Well, my teachers kept appearing. Every time I needed one, there was somebody, who helped me learn. And that's one of the things that why I'm active with student outreach, is because so many people help me to get to the top of my hill, that I want to be that person. Decades from now, somebody's telling a story about some old guy that helped them.
Right.
Okay, and I want that old guy to be me.
Right.
In that story. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I'm really involved in student outreach.
Yeah, that's great. So we got one last question, and this is the question we ask everybody. And so what would be your definition of what it takes to be a high performer? So it doesn't matter whether it's in business, life, or all of it together. What would you consider those traits that somebody who would be a high performer in life?
I think to be a high performer in anything, you have to have a crystal clear objective. Mm-hmm. You don't want to say, I want to climb pretty far up this hill.
Right.
You have to say, I want to climb to the very top of this hill.
Right.
Okay, and it might be a mountain.
Mm-hmm.
But I think people who could easily have success have not crystallized their objectives well enough, so that they just come to work because they came to work yesterday.
Right.
So I really think it's about objectives.
Right.
And if that's a rare person, if they really, really, really have an objective to which they're committed, mm-hmm. it's hard to find somebody that's not successful.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I would completely concur. I'm a huge person. I love the goal setting, even if I don't accomplish them. It's like I love that process of mm-hmm. setting the goals, mm-hmm. and and then going after them. It's that extra little drive. So, well, great. Well, I think we've got also limited on time. I want to be respectful of everybody's time as well, and obviously yours as well. You got some more meetings to run to here at ABMA Mothership, as Jen calls it. So I want to thank you and let you know that I'm grateful for you, and especially your guidance in the way we started this business and kind of validated our thought process on what we were doing here. But I also want to thank everybody else that's listening for your time and taking the time to listen to us. So we appreciate it. Obviously, leave us a review on iTunes or Spreaker, Stitcher Radio, any of those places. You can obviously also send us some message on highperfliving.com. Let us know what you think and who you'd like to hear. So until next time, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for joining us at High Performance Vet Pro Radio. We hope to hear from you soon. Like this episode? Leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud. It helps us to reach more veterinary professionals. For more information or to contact us, please visit us at highperfliving.com. Until next time, remember to live every day with intention.